Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Alad Vajdi. I'm your Health Center Institute Director. Thank you for joining me today. Interdisciplinarity involves the combining of two or more academic fields together into one activity. It involves crossing the boundaries between the disciplines in order to create something new. There is a need to solve new problems. Therefore, crossing the boundaries between the disciplines and borrowing ideas from one discipline to the other can help in doing that. Interdisciplinarity can be found for over 100 years, but only in the 20th century it became more academic movement. The MDT is a system that implements the integrative therapy perception. It strives for optimal integration of all disciplines, goals, exercises, schools, or developmental areas. So the child is seen as a whole, and all developmental areas are considered in unison. Let's examine and learn more about the MDT method and how it brings interdisciplinarity into the therapy world. The MDT method stands for multidimensional therapy. Let's have a look. So the MDT is an integrative framework for interdisciplinarity collaboration in treatment of children with complex developmental disorder. It's a therapeutic system which is designed to support complex pediatric rehabilitation processes via multi-level integration in treatment. So the MDT is mostly for the more complex cases, which autism can represent, or cerebral palsy, or Fragile X syndrome, or other complex syndrome, which demands high integration of a lot of areas. The MDT will inspect all developmental areas and enable the integration of all the knowledge in a lot of different levels, which you're gonna see later on. The expertise of the MDT system is the integration of knowledge. The MDT therapist or the MDT system is not an expert on each and every area, but rather the expertise in the ability to integrate the knowledge in the evaluation and in the managing the whole program, or even at the single practice or the endpoint practice with the child. So the ability to integrate in a lot of different levels, this is the main expertise of this system and the added value in comparison to other systems. So the MDT is an evidence-based algorithmic system which acts according to the dynamic theories. What does it mean? It means that when you go to the theory behind this whole system, this whole big system, it actually relies on the information that lies in the literature. It's not something mystical, it's not some idea that came out of nowhere, but rather something that has a lot of good structural basis in the literature. It relies on a lot of research in all areas and strives to research and to have an algorithmic kind of thinking in order to find solutions. Nevertheless, it's still dynamic and run according to the dynamic theories in the way you analyze the information and the way you practice eventually. One of the biggest differences between the disciplinary approach and the MDT approach is the way you analyze the data or the information in the evaluation phase. The disciplinary approach is using all disciplinary areas such as PT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech-language pathologist, psychology, of the medical aspect, social work, education, part or area, and other areas as well. So if a child is going for a multidisciplinary evaluation, so this child is gonna get an evaluation from the physical therapist, from the OT, from the SLP, social worker, and so on. These evaluations or perceptions are quite specific, for this specific area. And a lot of times they overlap. So you'll find overlapping between PT and OT. And you'll find overlapping between the speech therapy and occupational therapy, and between social work and PT and so on. So this picture of interaction between different areas and different evaluations and different overlapping is going to be something which is not constant and not something that you can count on, because what it creates eventually is the gaps between the professions. And these gaps are areas which are not being taken care of. And in this gap, we're going to lose a lot of information, and these gaps might represent an area which is not treated correctly. The MDT is doing something different. Instead of doing a disciplinary perception or looking or evaluating through the disciplinary approach, the MDT is looking at the primary numbers of development. So it will take each area within development and analyze it separately. So the areas can be the developmental course, what happened till the evaluation time, activities of daily living, all the medical area, motor area, gross and fine motor, the sensory area, the cognitive area, which is a big one, language as a language, receptive and expressive language, communication, speech for itself as a pronunciation entity, not the language, emotional evaluation, social evaluation, and behavioral evaluation. Each one stands for itself. Each one can be conducted by a different professional, but it's not about the profession, it's about the area of inspection. And when the analysis is done in this way, which each one of them is called the primary number of development, because it stands for itself. It's got its own neurological pathways. It's different from the others. They all interact between themselves for sure, all the time, in a multi-level of interaction and integration, but still each one stands for itself like a primary number in math. Therefore, if we'll evaluate each one separately and then look at the integration and interaction between all of these areas, we're not going to have gaps. We'll have theoretically all the information. Then, so the picture, the developmental picture, and the cross-sectional picture that we'll see at that specific moment of evaluation, potentially it's going to be whole and it's going to be correct with high resolution of this picture. And therefore, our decision-making for the treatment is going to be much more accurate. If we'll do a disciplinary approach evaluation, we might get the whole picture if we don't have the gaps. And in a non-complex situation, you might have most of the information around here within the OT or within the speech therapy. If the evaluation is very specific, if the problem is very specific, then maybe one circle will contain most of the phenomena, and then there's not going to be any holes, and then it's going to be sufficient. But if the case is very complex, and most of the areas are going to be involved, then this type of perception, or this type of examination of the information is going to be better. So this is a major difference between the MDT and the more traditional way of disciplinary approach or disciplinary evaluation. So in the MDT, there's a lot of levels of integration. Let's inspect all of them. So one of them, the first one is the family, because the family is the center of this procedure. The family navigates the procedure alongside the case manager. The family takes the decision where to go, with whom to work, what direction we're going to take, which goals are we going to do, because the family is the basis of this therapy, not the therapist and not the case manager. So the family sets a lot of things or takes a lot of decision within the process. Therefore, it's a level for itself within integration of all the knowledge and the whole structure. The case manager is has a very important role within the big structure, because the case manager is a professional person or professional entity within this whole structure, with supposed to take everything and put everything together and look and take all the information from all areas and decide which is more important, which is less important, what goals we need to put now, what goals we're going to use later on, which weights we're going to give to each or different areas of intervention. And in the case manager needs to lead this whole process professionally alongside the family. The integrated therapist or the primary therapist, it's a person within the structure which implements the MDT program and goes cross-sectional across all areas. It is not an expert in a specific area like speech or motor, though this therapist can be, but the main thing is that this therapist is going through looking at all the goals at the same time and understanding the interaction between all the goals and all the exercises and implementing things in a wide way. Now, some will say that it's not possible. How can one person look at all the areas, look at speech and fine motor, gross motor, communication, behavior, sensory, ADL, cognitive, reading, writing, and so on? How can one person deal with all of these things at the same time? And it looks like a big thing to do, like a burden, like something that you sometimes can't perceive, or if you'll do it, you won't do it in a good manner. Well, it's true that it looks like that, but practically it's not true, because we've learned over the years that if you learn, it's not about being an expert on each area. If you've got a good program that sets all the goals and exercises, and your role is just to implement the program, then it's totally doable. And it's doable in a good manner, because we've seen results over the years that tells us that even tutors or people who are not professionals will take such a program and learn the program and come with good understanding. Eventually they'll be able to execute this type of program in a very good way and to have a significant influence on the child's development. In addition to the primary therapist, we've got the professional therapist, the specialist, the PT, the OT, the speech therapist, behavior therapist, that works separately, each one on his own things, but also in collaboration. And the role of the case managers is to put them all together, to create the teamwork of these all experts, sometimes medical experts, and put all of them together in the same boat, going to the same direction, and understanding the relative part of each one of them in this journey. Collaboration of schools, integrating different schools or school and home or different areas. Maybe the child has an activity in the afternoon and kindergarten in the morning, and the parents are doing something else, and there's another clinic working with this child, and you need to integrate all these places so they work in unison together. So this is the MDT tries to define this type of relationship between these all areas or frames or frameworks in order to get the optimal integration, optimal results for all of them together. Because if one frame is working in one direction, the other is working in a different direction, then you won't get the preferable result. You want them all to work in one direction, bringing maybe new things or other perceptions, but still working completing each one's work. The use of knowledge from all disciplines and methods together is the type of interdisciplinary or even transdisciplinary work. So the MDT tries to take the information from all the known methods for this case manager and put the information or put the knowledge together under in the same basket, and use the information based on the need of this specific child. So you can take information from physio, from all kind of methods and ideas from physical therapy, and all kind of methods coming from the speech therapy, and all methods coming from the OT world, and other methods that are not specifically related to the disciplines, like the ABA or DIR, or Sunrise, or PETO, or the VML, or Prompt, or OPT, or Miller, or other methods, and Feldenkrais, or ABM, or Bobath, or whatever. There's a lot of methods around, hundreds of methods, and the more knowledge you've got of the methods, and more other knowledge coming from other areas that you can take and put it together and use it according to the specific goal that you set for this specific program, then you integrate the knowledge in the best way you can and having the best potential results. So it's not about the profession, it's not about the methods, it's about the knowledge that are within the disciplines, within the methods, and the way you can use it in an integrative way for getting the best results. The analysis of the MDT method is an algorithm-based analysis. So it takes all the variables, which are we've got about a few thousands of variables in the different evaluations, and integrates this whole knowledge in an algorithmic way. And because there's a lot of variables, you can't do it all at once. So you do it in a multi-level procedure. So in the first phase, you take an intake and analyze only the first phase, the superficial phase of evaluation, and decide on which areas are going to be your primary areas to focus on. And then you go to the second phase, you analyze that again in a more in-depth level, and you get your next areas, and then you go to the next level, analyze it again, and so on. And eventually, you'll be able to sort the information, all the variables from all the areas, and get your primary numbers, your primary goals to work on, coming from all the areas. So you have goals in the motor area, and goals in the sensory area, and cognitive goals, and maybe speech goals, and maybe communication goals. Depends on the child. And all of these goals are going to be related. There's going to be interaction between the results. So you can find interaction within each area, in the goals within each area, but you'll find interaction between areas as well. So there's going to be interaction between the goals, or the motor goals, and sensory goals, and the cognitive goals. They're gonna talk between themselves. They're gonna influence each other, and they're gonna support each other eventually. So the ability to analyze all the information, to get to the goals, and to do the analysis of within and between, gives you the basis for the treatment, because you start the treatment with setting the goals, and only then you move forward in setting the exercises and the amount of practice. And the last level of integration is the exercises, in which you also see a lot of integration, because one exercise can serve few goals. For example, a child is walking on the treadmill, watching TV. So if he walks on treadmill for 45 minutes, he can work on endurance, on strength, balance maybe. Okay, depends on running, or maybe the functionality of running after eventually. But at the same time, we can do work on language, using the TV, asking questions, getting answers, building syntax, or whatever, depends on the language goal. And we can work on speech as well, if you want to correct specific sounds, or work on speech goals at the same time. Can also develop confidence through walking on the treadmill and attention as well. So it depends on the child's goal. You can set an exercise that will integrate a lot of goals, whether some of them are being tackled explicitly and other maybe implicitly. So the child is not aware of the work that he's been doing, but let's take the example of the treadmill again. So the child is working on the treadmill and you put a video of the ABC songs, all kind of different ABC songs. So but the child is walking on the treadmill doing sports or endurance. But at the same time, implicitly, you're teaching him all the ABCs. And he's not aware of that. So you're actually combining two things here. So this is the exercise level of integration, and it's an important part within the whole integrative model. What is the uniqueness of the MDT system? So its integrative system structure or model is unique because it crosses all the boundaries and it collaborates or strives to collaborate everything together. In bringing the integrative thinking into the front stage, because this is the main thing, the way you think about things, the way you integrate the knowledge, the way you integrate your thinking through the evaluation and through the practice as well. The use of case manager. This is part of the system, an important part of the system that leads the whole system in the complex cases. It's an important part of the MDT method, which is not defined usually even in complex cases in the disciplinary world. The way the MDT is analyzing the variables and setting the program is a very unique way. It's an algorithmic way. It's written as a code. It's still being written as a code, and it's very unique. It doesn't exist anywhere else. We've got over 15,000 exercises written and practiced over the years. So we've got a huge base of exercises through all areas. We've got master program for each intervention area, and in each master program, we've got tens of exercises or potential exercises. And the MDT also got a set of teaching principles which are unique for the MDT, used in the VML as well, that show the therapist the way of practicing, giving guidelines for practicing the whole MDT structure. What's the MDT procedure on its way to build a program? So first of all, it's the initial appointment with your screening, and you do the first superficial intake to understand the weights or the gross picture. And then the examiner will do a more specific assessment in order to understand more thoroughly each area of potential intervention to go into the fine details of each area. So this assessment part will take a week or two, depends on the child. And then we'll go into the analysis, the inter and intra-developmental interaction analysis, when we're going to examine each area, each field for itself, and between the fields, and see the interaction between the fields. And as we saw before, there's a lot of fields to examine. So we need to do an intra-examination and inter-examination between area, and it will be done between all areas to see the interaction. After doing the analysis, we assume we understand what's happening, and then we can start developing the program structure based on a lot of different constraints. After we set the skeleton of the program, we write the goals. We set the goal, which is the basis, because we're going to practice based on the goals. After setting the goals, we can set the primary or the master programs for each area, or the master unit for each area, make a schedule, and then start the intervention. And with the intervention came the reevaluation and the feedback that brings it back here and to the assessment again, analysis again, and so on. So this is the MDT in a nutshell, because it's a big program, it's a huge program. It strives to bring everything together, all the knowledge that you've got, it tries to bring it together, crossing a lot of boundaries, crossing a lot of traditional perceptions, because what you set as your primary goal eventually is the child development, and you want to see what is the best way to do that. And the best way in the complex cases is to integrate all the knowledge and then and use it as an intervention program. So what we say usually is that integration makes perfection. Thank you very much.